Okay, my friends, Roger once again. They're up around Mars and they're looking at things on Mars, and I'll show you what they're looking at right now. But before I do that, this is a tendon ball. That is a tendon ball. That is the tendon, well, it's a tendon enthesis. I call them tendon balls. And this is the abrupt transition where it breaks right here. The same thing with this one here. This one's quite heavily weathered. Now, moons are also the same as tendon balls. That's the central core stalk, which I will show you in a second in a microscope. Hold on, we're going to go up to the microscope right there. I have to shut the lights off to see it correctly. Boom, the lights go off. Now we're looking through the microscope light. This is the crater, which is the same as the crater on Mars and every other, well, you'll see it everywhere. Now, this is an exact circle. All right, you can see that, I'm sure. And you can see that's the core. This is a red dot. That is a black dot. And when I show you what's up on Mars, you're going to freak out. Let me see if I can come in a little closer. That's about the best we're going to get. But you can see how there's a stalk going in there. And that was the fiber that came out that held that enthesis, which means an emplacement, an anchor. And the fiber is what gives. But they snap at the abrupt transition, which is that abrupt transition right there, which is that abrupt transition right there. I just got this in from a friend. I get so much stuff, it's amazing. You see all these little fibers? You think about what that is. I know what it is, I'm almost certain. You think about what it is, I will entertain suggestions. Alright, you see this? You see that one right there? You see that one right there? The black one is the vein. Always the black is the vein. Red one is the blood. That is literally the equatorial ridge. This is from a tendon ball that was smashed. You can see this was normally what you would see, but it's concreted a little bit. And this, concretion, a bunch of stuff glued to it, basically. This is the black blood. This is the red blood, tendon and artery. Different tendon balls have different structure. This has equilateral ridge, whatever they call it. This one does too. That's Iapetus. Iapetus has both the black and the two attachments, and it has the ridge. I'm going to show you different tendon balls that have different styles of attachments. They are in different places in the body. Alright, once again, you see all these little divots and so forth, and the black and the, where I call it the vein and the artery, and you see all of these little notches. Well, what do you see here? That's the equatorial ridge on mine. And the same, it's exactly identical architecture, and they all have the same thing, because that was in flesh at one time, and it doesn't want to pull out. So these are the anchors that hold them in. And I think the equatorial ridge must be on tendons that are really got to be locked in, because that's not going to pull out. The other ones, they never do pull out. They only break at the abrupt transition, which I showed you, which is that abrupt transition right there. This is another ball that is in a different shape, and I don't know whether it's shaped differently because of the way it, usually they're made in the shape that they end up solidifying, because they are tough and hard as hell. They're tendon balls. Now that's Mimas, the exact same stuff, same texture, same strap. It appears all the moons have the same basic implant. This is Tetchus, and you saw Iapetus and all the other moons. Even our moon has the same structure on it. That's why they call him the man in the moon, his eyeball. Okay, remember these tendon balls, and remember this strap. And remember where it attaches, and these big flat straps of tendon. That should have been in whatever that was, muscle or whatever, and locked in there so that the muscles and tendons can pull against an anchor. It's pulled out. But remember that they have a whole batch of them. They're all over the place, and they lock these mats into you so that you're really. I believe they're primarily in the abdominal area, where it really locks in these mats. You know, I should probably show you. Yes, I will. All right, little anatomy lesson. This is the flat muscles, well, the flat muscles, and then you have tendons, like really that lock things down, and that's where those balls, I believe, attach to these tendons. This is what they call the hunter's line, which is your center section. Like, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. Your body has a seam in it. When you're first formed, you have a ball and it seals together. I don't want to go into too much details, but you could see how loaded with this thick connective tissue fascia. It's all over your body, everywhere. I mean, everywhere. It connects muscles to other muscles, to bone, and there's all different types of tendons. And I don't know if they know this because they're so small in us that I don't know if they've ever been really looked into. I'm going to talk to some anatomy people and find out, because I can tell you for a fact, and you will see them momentarily, there's several at least different styles of tendons. They're totally different from each other, but they all have the same function. They lock in. Okay, what I just showed you in the anatomical, this is that white, fibrous, flat, strappy tendon, and these are the balls that lock it in, and these are the fibers that allow it to glide back and forth on your stomach, apparently, in that specific area, let's say. These stalks break off right here. You see? They're all over the place. And they're not just right here. There's a batches of them, one right after the other. However, in between is this nice, clear, white tendon. Nice, solid, really tough stuff. That's what they made the walls in Peru out of, and down all South America. Okay, my friends, after I just showed you what I showed you, there it is right there. That is these tendon balls that anchored in to a mat of flesh. That has eroded away. Remember? Then it went up to the tendon mat, which was the very heavy-duty white fibers. Now, this petrified, it appears to me, in a very salty area, I believe, and it probably ended up running into the Great Salt Lake. I don't know, I'm just speculating, but they can't account for all the salt on Earth. Well, it collects, it gets into it, because it was all flushed out of the bodies of these creatures, the gigantic creatures. That's the last I'm going to say that I apologize for the size of them, because they're just here. And this was all written about, so I have nothing to say about it, you know, other than that they're here. Now, these are other balls. Remember I showed you there are balls everywhere. They're everywhere. Now, is there any more straps? Well, there was. And how can Roger say that? Well, Roger can say that because it was right here. And remember I show you the central cores of these things? There it is right there. Now that ran down to a ball. Where would it have run to? Let's think about that. Well, look at that. There's a ball right there. It would have probably run right to that ball, and it's collapsed and broken down, and this guy better be careful because, you know, the straps, here's the deal. The balls are tough. The flesh is weak. The tendon is tough. The straps, they're pretty tough, but they're not like the balls or the actual flat tendon mats. They're not quite as tough. I guess maybe this is probably as tough as the flat mat. I don't really know, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's more likely to break, and they break normally at the abrupt transition or back up here like that one did. But there is like an exact abrupt transition. Wait a minute, I'll show you one right now. Okay, I have giants on my property, and I haven't had them. I have had them DNA certified as human, no question. This is a tendon running down to the fingertip, only it runs this way, so it's actually the other way around. Now that runs down like this, and there's an abrupt transition right there. Now this is literally the muscle. You see that? That's a muscle that wrapped around the bone ball. And this side has not eroded away as badly as this side. That's the bone right there. And that's the flesh and the tendon. That's how many layers there is. Now, like I say, it eroded this side away. This side is still fairly complete. And that right there, that little stub right there, is the core of that tendon. And that tendon ran down in between your fingers. That ran right down in between your fingers. Basically, it was one of these. That would be my finger running right out this way, and this ran down in between my fingers so I could do this kind of stuff. That's what this made it work. And that's that little bump right there, which is the abrupt transition. Because once you get from after the tendon, you hit the muscle. Remember I said I had DNA tests done? Well, I did. This was tested for DNA, and it was human, and it was found basically in the same hole as these particular ones. This hand, which is a left hand, that's the knuckle, remember I showed you from it, and the broken off tendon with a little abrupt transition and the muscle fibers wrapping around it. Now, this is also a fingertip from that same hand, and I got all kinds of stuff from it, and I had a CAT scan DNA tested, the whole shooting match, and it is 100% human, and everything was dense in DNA. And I have one even bigger than this. This is over 3 feet wide. I don't know, maybe 4 feet wide, somewhere around there. The fingertip of the other one that was also on this DNA test, hold on, was here. That's the fingertip. That's one fingertip. All right. That's the little. There's a little pad on the end of your fingers, on the end of each bone of your fingers that bumps up against the next finger, and that's that pad. This is the fingernail, and it's in very good shape. It was really in good shape. It must have had some good fingernail clippers back then. And you can't get blood from grip skin, and I will show you why in a second. So I had to break off this to get into where the blood was, the best supply of blood, and I did. And what broke off was a fingerprint. You see that? These are the sweat pores. And this is literally the grip skin. My thumb is a width of one fingerprint ridge. All right, and you see little sweat pores on it? These are sweat pores. You see them up here? Sweat pores, and that's why you can't get, because you see this pad? Extremely keratinized cells, which means there's almost no blood in them whatsoever. You get below that and you got a lot of blood. Otherwise you'd be just gushing blood out of your fingers all day long. I work with so many rocks here, and they are tough. This thing here will scrape you half to death. That's like the coarsest sandpaper you ever saw. So you have to have grip skin. You have to have this heavy-duty skin, but there's no blood there. So I went below that and got into where there was dense blood, and it was said on the DNA report, excellent quality DNA was obtained from this one and that one. And I obtained it myself, the samples, and sent them off. I didn't send them actually to big rocks or anything. This rock, this fingertip here must weigh 1,000 pounds. I mean, it's just gigantic. It's huge. Well, I don't know, 1,000 pounds, maybe a little heavy, but this is pretty heavy. So anyway, this is all pretty well documented, and the DNA test is absolute certainty. And they can be retested. If anybody, oh, you must have done this, you must have done that, well, you come and do it. Because I could do it again and you say the same thing again. All right, these are the DNA reports. I had 3 specimens done on this one report, and this was back in 2015. I even have other ones. This wasn't DNA tested, but it looks to be sort of a human foot. They refuse to examine any of this stuff because it falls outside of their acceptance to examine. They just refuse. Every single university, 100%. And all of these 3 samples, the big gigantic fingertip, this lung, and then the mud tip was this one here, from that hand that I showed you, which I have almost, well, I have a lot from that. And actually, I have the foot too. It was down about 70 or 80 feet down the back. And this was the DNA. They extracted it from the samples that I sent to them. All right, they just make that perfectly clear. They did not they didn't come here and take us samples. I took the samples. Now, this is how everything was done. I can put, well, this is online. It's been online since it was up there. And all three of them tested positive for mitochondrial DNA. The two of them were dense, and one of them was not as dense. And this is all the specifics. Now, here's the bottom line: is the products were submitted after Helix did it. They extracted and then sent them to Eaton Biolabs for DNA sequencing, and they were used to generate PCR products, also used in DNA sequencing. Excellent quality DNA sequence obtained for the 36-inch tip, the big gigantic one I smashed a piece off, and for the lung, which is this, using these primers and so forth. Anyway, what they ended up being is Homo sapien, mitochondrial D and B gene. Now, I asked the lab director, is that 100% certain that what I sent you was human DNA? And he said 100% certain. But this is only the mitochondrial side. This is the mother side. And apparently we all have that same particular gene sequence in the mother side. So, but it indicates that we are Homo sapien. You know, it's species specific, or whatever I call it. Now, and it goes through. This was not cheap, and it wasn't simple, and it took a while to do it. And I had all three done, and then I had CAT scans done of the stuff. I could get CAT scans. Some of it was just, kind of big. But this was CAT scan. You can't see much in it because it's done something's called nucleophilic substitution. What that means is that the biology that was in here, could easily deteriorate and go bad. What happened was there was a hot water flood on the earth. And this was recorded in every culture, so it's not some mystery. It's just that it's been refused to be examined by academia. And we are going to examine it because I'm going through a series about Velikovsky, who did this, and they destroyed him. This was in 1950. And I'm going through his whole works again with the Mudfossil eyes, because now we know these things are factual, the things he was talking about. Now I have to change my mind around a little bit to understand what he was saying. Because at the time, he just sort of fluffed around and he said, "Ooh, that would be interesting. Ooh, well, now I have so much evidence to examine what he is saying with a critical eye." You see that? That's the apical tuft. You get any good anatomist, he'll know that's the apical tuft. I have another one right here. Remember I told you that hand eroded all kinds of different ways? This is another one. You see that round circle? Take your time. See it in the shadows? That's one of these. And all of those little balls lock in here. There's a ton of little fibers. I mean a ton of them. And every one of them has a ball just like that locks in there. Not only is it on this side, there's another one on the other side. You see that one? See that round circle? You got to get things in the right shadows sometimes to see them. You see all the tendon balls running out of it? This one hasn't eroded down to where you can see the balls, but this one has. And that's what makes your finger be able to do all those different things. Tendons are amazing, and they are tough, tough, tough. And this, like I say, everything here is totally 100% scientifically verified, validated in every possible way, and the chemistry all works out. Everything. And I fully understand the process. And now I fully understand what feldspar is, and nobody else does. Feldspar is collagens from fibers and membranes and mucosal surfaces that have turned into highly sulfurous, sulfurous silicates. And I believe it's the sulfur. I can't, boy, I tell you, I almost forgot. Hold on. Whew, that was close. I almost misspoke. What I meant to tell you about is the aluminum silicon connection. It's alumina silicates. Every feldspar are alumina silicates, and they are a coat everything because that is the collagen being invaded by aluminum. Aluminum goes both directions. All right, and it says aluminum, silicon, and aluminum ions. Ions mean they can be bound in both directions. It can go positive or negative. And so anyway, that's what causes feldspar. The reason I was talking about sulfur is sulfur. I was looking into it to figure out where sulfur actually comes from, and it's very, very heavy in your body, but it doesn't really concentrate in any specific area unless somebody can tell me. But it's in a lot of the skin and the mucosal areas. There appears to be a lot of sulfur, and that is where it builds your membranes. So I think it's somewhere in the membrane-ish area. But anyway, sulfur is not specifically, sulfur I believe is below the collagen layer, which is the feldspar layer, aluminosilicates, and I believe the sulfur sits below that. I'd like to be able to see if I can find those layers, but I believe that's the case. Okay, so I'm going to have a part 2 to this, and I think you should watch it. This is not just a natural formation, so forth. This is the outside layer, which is the tendon, and I showed you the black and the red and the black, which I have identical same structure, identical. So we are gonna, and I'm gonna show you the Mars crab, I'm gonna show you the Mars blueberries, I'm gonna show you the Mars Morse code, and all of those are 100% biological, and I have 100% evidence, and I will show you, hold on, I gotta find it. Here it is, here it is. A meteorite. That's a meteorite. But guess what? It's also a body part. That's a meteorite came from space, and that is saturated with blood. And that, my friends, is a tendon emplacement. And these are the straps that ran down to the tendons. That is the tip of a finger. And I have one from Earth, which is identical. Hold on, let me see if I can find that. That might take a little while. Here it is. Woo, in luck today. This is identical, only it is a terrestrial fingertip. I cannot say why they apparently had battles in the heavens. There's all kind of body parts floating around up there. And all the astronauts say, it smells like steak when they come back in after their walk. You see this? Even the hook right there. You see that hook? You see that hook? Same hook. You see this? This is the vein side, which clamps off so it doesn't bleed out. That's a fingertip. The other side is the artery side. It leaks the blood right out, the tip and the arteries. I have the same fingertips here that I can show you, and I will. And this one here it's identical. There's no difference whatsoever. Exactly identical. This is terrestrial though, and so it didn't burn up coming through space. This one did. And the blood exploded. That didn't just leak out of here. This one leaked and just hardened up. You see it? That's blood. This one exploded because it was wet. It had to have it had to be saturated with water. And as it came through, it heated up. Pow! As these started to blister up, and all this heat. You can even see this. You see that? These are the kind of tendon emplacements we have. Absolutely stunning to see what is. There was 3 of them. One here, one here, and one here. And this one just exploded right off. And that would have been the guy's fingertip, that big. Coming through space. Don't ask me how it happened, but it did. It's here. And that is blood. That's blood. I looked at it in a microscope. There's no question whatsoever. That is blood. Now, need to look at what our real reality is here. The gods were real. They talked about all of this. And even the ancient Greeks said that, I think it was the Greeks, but they said that a human drama played out in the heavens. Were these people up there in the heavens standing, this big, gigantic people throwing swords at each other and doing all kind of crazy things? It could be. I don't know now. I really don't know. But I can tell you what, everything that's in the universe that I can see right now is made of biology. And you say, oh, what about the sun? Well, the sun is just so big, it's scrubbing so hard through the particles in space that it's burning, basically. I don't know, it probably was some kind of a body part. The bigger they get, the harder they scrub. The harder they scrub, the more they heat up. It's just like us. We're blowing up our atmosphere so big, it's scrubbing so hard, we get these tornadoes and hurricanes and floods and fires and droughts, and all these things are catastrophes going on the earth because we're scrubbing through space. Space is not empty. It's 100% saturated with the particles of light that are emitted from every single luminous source. 100% illumination is particles. We have to get through them. We're scrubbing through them. I've shown this over and over and over in our light experiments. Which means literally everything is wrong. Basically everything is wrong. Until we start to look at the world with this approach. And then if I'm found out to be totally wrong, I'm totally wrong. I'll go about my way. I couldn't care less. But if until I'm heard, I will not go on my way. The dipole electron flood theory, I did this, 50 years ago. I had this. I said, there's no such thing as a big, gigantic positive core and little electrons. No, impossible. And they have stuck to that model up until now. They just don't understand that the proton, when it breaks up into what these are. These are electrons. Electrons glued together make photons. Two of them back to back make a photon. They go through the air and they bang into things and they bounce. Electron bangs into something, it incorporates in. Protons are nothing more than an accumulation of electrons. And that is what they look like. A big ball of electrons. You wouldn't see the center. You would never see that dark. But if you were able to take away, which we did, we were stripped all the electrons away, and what we could see was that. Whoops. It just hit the floor. That was dark matter. Now it's gone. But it resides. Whoops, I can feel it under my feet. There it is. I found it. Dark matter. See? I found dark matter again. That's twice. Okay, I am just going to let this play as I speak, so I might stop here and there and talk about it. But the reason I am doing this video today is that I want to begin to, speak about, see, that's the tendon and placement, the exact center, and I'm going to show how it sits in here. This is heavily eroded. Now, and this is when it's in my shop, in the microscope, and there's a little blood supplies and so forth, and that's the dead center of that little circle. If you stand way back and look at things, sometimes you can see them even better. Now, again, I am going to make a part 2 to this, because the entire solar system that I can determine was biological. And I have all of the evidence here to show that I'm not just making these things up. These are the kind of things that were made, and they were in the bodies of creatures, and these were like tendon balls. Really tough stuff. And I have so much evidence to support what I'm saying. It's just amazing. So that's what we're going to do, is get into this deeply to try to understand our real, true, honest past, and who knows, maybe even what we're facing in the future. But if you stick with me, we can get somewhere. But I cannot get anywhere by myself. I do not have any access to anyone, because I've been pretty much shut down because of the things I've been saying. They just don't like these things talked about. It changes everything. I mean, 100%. There's not a single thing is unchanged there. Not a single thing. So, and I need help. I need help getting this out. If I don't have help, this will just be unknown to the average person that moons are tendons. And they're all, every single one of them has one of these emplacements, just as far as I can determine. Or they have some form of biology to them. Mars is literally 100% biological, so is Earth. And as far as I could determine, all of them could very well be. But if we don't examine them and talk about them, if we hide from all of these, the evidence, and I'm showing evidence, I'm showing bones that turn to stone. Now they don't accept that as a bone. I'm not kidding you. Yale does not accept that as a bone. I couldn't even believe it. All my stuff, I had DNA tested and CAT scanned and anatomists and chemistry, and they still will not allow it. So I am going against Yale and all the rest of them. I am fully qualified to speak of the things I am speaking about. And I have done the research, and I have done my homework. It is time for them to do their homework as the professors that profess.